Gigis Joy Corner. I'm so glad that you always come to visit me because it just fills me with joy. Do you get tired of Gigi telling you that? I hope not, because I never get tired of talking about the joy that comes from knowing Jesus. I also never get tired of the verse in Philippians 4:4. You know the one I'm talking about. Say it with me. Rejoice in the Lord always. And again I say, rejoice. Do you know why I never get tired of that verse? Because I know that if we remember that verse and we try to live out that verse, that we will be joyful. You know, Gigi loves to talk about joy. That's the reason I call this my Joy Corner. And I love to come and sit in this chair and read. You know what? One of my most favorite things to do is to read to you. Another thing that Gigi loves to do is to read from the Bible. And I have a verse for you today that I want to read, and I think that you can remember this verse probably in just a snap because you're so smart. This verse comes from 1 John 4, verse number 16. I had to look. 1 John 4:16. And the first three words are easy to remember. God is love. Did you know that's in the Bible? That is one of the verses that we read and that we can easily remember. God is love. Let me read the rest of it. It says, whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in him. Do you know that when we show the love of the Lord, that's showing that God's in our heart and that we want to do what he asks us to do. Do you know the very best way to know how to do the things that God wants us to do? To read our Bible. Yes. And there are several different versions of the Bible. Some are a lot easier to read than others. Some have big words, some have pictures. But the thing is, no matter which Bible you read, it all has God's Word in it. And if we hide God's Word in our heart, then we are going to know what to do when those hard times come and we have to make choices. So what's the Bible verse today? The one in 1 John 4:16. Just remember the first three words, and I think that will remind you of what Gigi wants to talk about today. Do you remember those three words? God is love. You know it, don't you, already? God is love. See there, you are so smart you already know another Bible verse. Now, have you noticed that Gigi has something different on her table again? I've been doing that lately, haven't I? You will recognize this, I'm sure, because I read this book to you not so long ago. It's a book by Max Lucado, and the title is You Are Special. Now, why do you think Gigi wants to have this where you can see that today? Because I want you to remember the characters in that book. Do you remember Punchinello and Lucia? Those were the two main characters in that book. Do you remember that? Who made them? Eli. That's right. Eli was the wooden wimmock maker, and those people lived in Wemmicksville, didn't they? So it's a make-believe story, but we can learn a lot from Lucia and Punchinello and Eli, because to me, they remind us of ourselves and God, because God is our maker, right? All right, that sort of reviews us about what we're going to be talking about today, because I have another book that talks about the Wemmicks and talks about Punchinello and Lucia and Eli. But the name of this book is Best of All. Some of you might even remember this book, or a book that I read about the Wemmicks that was something about a green nose. Do you remember that? If I only had a green nose. And it also talked about the Wemmicks, didn't it? Well, I wonder which Wemmick thinks they are best of all. Do you think that Eli created one better than any of the others? Well, let me ask you this question. Did God create one person other than Jesus, because we know he was perfect, don't we? But are we any more special than anybody else? I think God created us all special. That's what this book was about, wasn't it? Well, let's see what Max Lucado writes about in this book. Did I show you an up-close picture? Best of all. Higher on the right! Higher on the right! Demanded the mayor. There was no patience in his voice. Chip the Wemmick lifted the banner and stretched as high as he could and pounded the nail into the pole. Is this better? He barely asked the question when his ladder began to sway, first one way and then the next. Crash! Chip grabbed the nail he just hammered and held on. Perfect, declared the mayor, just perfect. As Wemmicks ran to the rescue of the dangling worker, the mayor's wife read aloud the words stretched over the street. Wemmicksville welcomes Miss Bess Stovall. Look at here. See, they're putting a banner in the middle of the street, and this must be the mayor's wife, and she says that it says welcome to somebody named Bess Stovall. Wonder who that could be. Oh, she clapped her hands as she spoke. What a wonderful day! Whoever would have thought that such a famous person would visit our village? You know what they say, don't you? Everyone leaned forward. When it comes to Wemmicks, she's the best of all. Punchinello and Lucia were near enough to overhear her words. Like the rest of the townspeople, they were wooden Wemmicks made by Eli, the Wemmick maker. Unlike the rest of the village, they were puzzled. Tell me again, Punchinello asked the mayor's wife. Why is she so famous? Well, because everybody knows her. And why does everyone know her? Because she's famous. Do you think that answered his question? I don't think so either. But why is she coming to Wemmicksville? Punch asked. The mayor's wife rolled her eyes in disgust. Haven't you heard? She's here to choose members for the wonderful Wemmicks Club. Oh, brother. Punchinello nodded like he understood, but he really didn't. He looked at Lucia and she looked at him, and both shrugged their shoulders. He was just about to ask another question when the watch Wemmick on the top of the hill shouted, She's here! She's here! Doors flew open, stores emptied, villagers rushed from all directions to the end of Main Street. Fathers lifted children to their shoulders, and short Wemmicks elbowed their way to the front of the crowd. There was so much shouting and pointing and tiptoe standing until a uniformed wooden soldier, looking very official and formal, appeared at the turn of the road. With scroll in hand and bugle hanging from his neck, he marched over the Wemmick River Bridge and stopped in front of the crowd. Staring straight ahead at no one, he stood stiffly until all had hushed. Opening the scroll, he read in a loud voice, Cut from the grandest forest, carved from the strongest tree, full of sap, only the purest, she's one of the highest pedigree. So welcome ye Wemmicks to your village so small, the noblest grain from the finest lumber, she is Bess Stovall. Wow, this must be somebody really important, isn't it? With snappy movements, he tucked the scroll under his arm and pulled the bugle to his lips. Do you know what a bugle is? It's like a horn, kind of like a trumpet, but it's like a horn. And he went, Da-da-da-da! When the Wemmicks saw what the Wemmicks saw next caused a village-wide gasp. A squad of soldiers marched around the corner, shouldering a tall box with curtains. From behind him, Punchinella heard the crowd whisper, "It's her! It's her!" The box sat on two poles, and the poles rested on the shoulders of 4 soldiers. 2 guards walked in front, 2 walked in back. Boots on the wooden bridge made the only sound. Click, 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 click. They kept in perfect step until one of the soldiers stumbled just slightly. The box leaned out over the water. The villagers gasped a second time. Let the box lean much farther and the guest of honor would fall into the fast-flowing river. But the soldiers straightened themselves, crossed the bridge, and came to a stop in front of the mayor and his wife. They lowered the box. The trumpet-toting, scroll-reading servant stepped forward and after a long pause, pulled back the curtain. As Bess stepped out, the villagers stepped back. They'd never seen a wooden person quite like Miss Bess Stovall. Feathers flumed out of her hat. Earrings dangled to her shoulders. Both her lips and dress were bright red. Her shoes were tall, her nails were long, and most noticeably, a large golden letter M hung from her neck. Do you see Miss Bess Stovall? Wow, she does look kind of different, doesn't she? You see her red dress and her red lips and her big hat. And then around her neck is a golden M. Wonder what the M stands for. We don't know yet, do we? When she snapped her fingers, a sentry handed her a white cloth. With it, she carefully wiped the M and held it up like a mirror before her face. Seeing her reflection, she adjusted her hair and smiled. Bess Stovall was pleased with herself. With eyes peering down her high nose, she held out her hand, allowing it to fall forward from the wrist. Ahem! The mayor's wife understood the gesture. She elbowed her husband. "Kiss it! Kiss her hand!" He did. And when he did, the visitor spoke. "What good fortune is yours that I have come your way?" She smirked, head back, hands still extended. The mayor's wife curtsied and motioned for the other Wemmicks to do the same. They did, even the men. "Shall we get on with the greetings?" Bess asked. "Of course," answered the mayor. "Everyone in line." One by one, the citizens of Wemmicksville passed before their guest. "Yes, yes," she would reply to whatever was said to her. "Welcome to our village." "Yes, yes." "We're glad you're here." "Yes, yes." "We're honored." "Yes, yes." Oh, Bess, she's something special, all right. She was less concerned about what they said than what she saw. Occasionally, she would pause and stare deeply at a Wemmick. She examined the nose of the store owner and the ear of his son. She ran a gloved thumb across the hand of the house builder and took a long look at the forehead of the painter. No one knew what she was looking for, and no one asked, although the wife of the mayor acted as if she knew, nodding when the famous guest nodded and sighing when she sighed. The shortest and longest looks were given to Punchinello and Lucia. Those are our 2 main characters, aren't they? Upon seeing Punchinello, Bess suddenly stepped back before he could touch her hand. Lifting her nose and waving, she instructed, "Go on, go on." Stunned, Punch didn't move. He just stood there, curious. "Move on," her servants repeated with a firm voice. Punchinello did. Lucia started to follow him, not wanting the same treatment. Suddenly the grand visitor stopped Lucia. My, Bess Stovall admired. "What have we here?" Her eyes widened, and for the very first time since she began greeting Wemmicks, a smile softened her narrow face. "Such fine grain, and a nice shade. Are you maple?" Lucia didn't understand. "Excuse me? Are you made of maple?" She had to think before answering. "Yes." "Which forest?" Bess was asking Lucia what kind of wood she was made of. Was it maple wood? And Lucia said yes. Lucia paused and thought. It took some time to remember what forest she came from. "Majestic," she finally answered. Bess placed her hand over her mouth in surprise. "Then you and I are of the same family tree." "We are?" Bess Stovall laughed. "Of course." She then leaned forward and whispered, "How nice to find someone of my roots. Stay around and we'll talk." Lucia did. Between greetings, Bess Stovall would make remarks to Lucia beneath her breath, such as, "Ugh, what a naughty temper," or "such an inferior grove," or "definitely from the wrong side of the mountain." Lucia understood none of those comments, but she didn't say so. After all the greetings, Bess signaled for Lucia to step near. "Tomorrow we must chat. I have something for you," she said, fingering her M necklace. With that, she turned and left, escorted by the soldiers, followed by the mayor and his wife. Punchinello approached Lucia. "Did I do something wrong?" "I don't know." "Did you do something right?" "I don't know." "Why is she so kind to some Wemmicks and rude to others?" That's a good question, isn't it? I think it has something to do with your ancestry. My what? What forest you came from. Why does that matter? I don't know. They turned and left the village. Neither one spoke. They hadn't known they were different, and now that they did, they didn't know how to feel. "I'll see you tomorrow," Punch finally said. "Yeah, sure," Lucia replied. Neither felt too happy. As the days passed, they saw each other less and less. It took Bess Stovall only a short time to select her favorite Wemmicks for the wonderful Wemmicks Club. Lucia was among them. So were the store owner and Mr. and Mrs. Mayor. Bess gave each an M to wear around their neck. "The M is for maple. You are all maples," she explained as she showed them how to polish the medallion. "Not all Wemmicks are equal. Some are common, made of pine or elm. A few are quality, cut from maple, like you. Fewer still of us are from a fine family tree." She glanced at Lucia, and Lucia blushed. The other Wemmicks politely applauded. See, she's saying that some of those Wemmicks were better than others. How do you think it made some of those people feel? And then Bess Stovall curled her lip as if she just tasted something sour. She said, "Some Wemmicks are willows." "Willows?" they asked. "Willow is weak wood," the maple Wemmick explained. It bends, it bruises, shallow roots. No one wants to be a willow. Well, do you know any? The mayor's wife asked. Actually, there's one right here in your village. They all leaned forward, curious. Bess looked again at Lucia. It's your friend. Punchinello? Lucia asked. Everyone gasped. I always knew he was weaker, someone said. Been suspecting a bad family for years, agreed another. Such a sapling, a third added. The rest nodded. Lucia nodded with them. From that day forward, Wemmicksville began to change. Townspeople took notice of each other's tree type. The walnuts looked down on the pines looked down on the elms, and the maples looked down on everyone, and everyone looked down on Punchinello. Now, boys and girls, that's where we're going to end our story today, even though we're only half through. This is a long book, but I want us to stop right here just a minute and talk about how Punchinello must be feeling right now. Everybody thinks he's not important because he is different than they are. And some of the maple tree people, those that were made from the maple wood, they think they're better. Do you think that some people think they're better than others? I can't wait to read you the rest of the story in the next time that we get together. But until then, I want you to think about how the people were treating Punchinello. Are they treating him as if he's loved? No. Are they treating him the way Jesus would want us to treat him? No. Do you think God is pleased with the way he's being treated? I don't either. Because you see, you remember our verse? God is love. Remember that? God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in him. I don't think that these Wemmicks were living in love. They certainly weren't showing it to Punchinello. Well, until we read the rest of the story, you just be nice to everybody you see, no matter if they're just like you or not. Remember to show them God's love. And let's also share our Bible verse with them. The one about God is love, and the one that says, rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. I'll see you next time. Can't wait to read you the rest of the story. Come back to Gigi's Joy Corner